Hi, my name is Justin Chalfant. I am the founder here at Patch My PC. Our company develops a solution for automatically packaging and patching third-party applications within Microsoft Configuration Manager and Intune. Prior to Patch My PC, I was also a premier field engineer at Microsoft supporting Configuration Manager, Intune, and Intune for Education. If you've been watching any of the videos on the channel, up to this date, I primarily only talked about Configuration Manager. This will be the first video in a series covering Microsoft Intune, and in this guide, we're going to be taking a look at what you need to consider and how to set up Microsoft Intune for the first time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and turn off my video so we can focus only on the content. I'm at the Microsoft doc page for Microsoft Intune. You can quickly get here by going to aka.ms/Intune docs. So there's a variety of different sections here that are covering different components of Microsoft Intune. In this guide, we're going to primarily be focused on the steps that are involved in setting up an Intune trial for free. So if we go ahead and jump over here, this goes over some of the basics, and we'll link out to this guide in the accompanying blog post as well. What we're going to do to get started is go ahead and click on the Intune Setup Account page. Go ahead and click on that, and that's going to take us where we can register for an Intune trial. Now what we're going to do here is enter in our email address, so our work or school email. So for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to use my patchmypc.com email address and choose next. Now one thing to note is that if you've already got an Intune subscription associated with a tenant for the domain name that you're using for your work or school email, it will by default detect that and ask you, do you want to sign in and just manage the existing Intune subscription? Now, in this case, I want to actually go ahead and choose to create a new account instead. Now, if you don't currently have an Intune subscription with that domain, the prompt might look different where it says create or trial instead of sign in. For this video, I'll go ahead and create a new subscription because we do want to do the 90-day trial here instead of managing our existing subscription for Intune. Now on this page, there's going to be some basic metadata that we need to fill out. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out some of the basics here for our account that we want to create. And we'll choose next here. Now, the one thing that you will have to do, and this is a verification step for Microsoft to confirm that you're actually a human. So they want to make sure that it's a legitimate trial request. So you have two different options here. You could either get a text message to confirm, or you could have a call me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this over to my cell phone number. And I'm going to go ahead and click Send Verification Code. All right, so we have got that text, so I'm going to go ahead and enter in the code that we got and click on Verify. Now, this step is where you're going to create your tenant for your Microsoft Azure AD account. So this will be something that you cannot change in the future. So you really want to think about, what do you want your primary tenant domain name for the .on Microsoft account. So this will be used in things like SharePoint links when you share them publicly. Now we can of course verify a public domain such as setupmem.com or a company domain, and we can use that for things like our email addresses, for example. But as far as the core tenant domain name for things like SharePoint sites and items like that, it will use this domain that you specify, and that can't be changed in the future. So just take note of that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to choose a domain name called Set Up Mem. So we're going to be setupmem.onmicrosoft.com. And when I clicked on save, we can see that there is no conflicts, meaning that no one else had that account. For the username, this is going to be our global administrator account that it creates. I'm just going to do admin@setupmem.onmicrosoft.com. For the password, Just going to paste in a password here and click on Next. All right, so we are now done. So we've got, it looks like it's actually a 1-month trial. I might have said 90 days before, but the link that I used from the docs page, it looks like it's currently 1 month for the Intune trial. From here, we can go ahead and click on Get Started. This should take us to the Microsoft Online Admin Portal for Office 365 or Microsoft 365 for what it's called now. So the first step that we're going to do here, and this is totally optional. Now, if you wanted to, you could totally use the domain name called, the domain name for the .onmicrosoft.com that you registered with. For the purpose of this trial and this demo, I'm going to show you how to verify a public domain name, and we're actually going to go through the process of purchasing a new domain name as well using Cloudflare. But if you didn't want to spend money to buy a domain name, which is generally under $10, you can simply use the user account on the .onmicrosoft.com domain. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and click on Setup. And one of the first steps will be getting a custom domain name. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Get a Custom Domain Name. And this is where we can verify a public domain name if we didn't want to use that .onmicrosoft. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to buy a new domain name called setupmem.com. So what I'm going to do is jump over to Cloudflare. This is my personal favorite website for domain registrations. I also use it for things like CDN and firewalls for any public domain that I personally buy. The one cool thing about Cloudflare is there's no markup on their domain cost. So it's whatever the fee is for ICANN that Cloudflare would charge. Now, of course, you could use any other registrar like GoDaddy, Google Domains, anything would be perfectly fine. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to use Cloudflare to go and purchase my new domain, which is setupmem.com. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Buy. The price is currently $9.15 when we're using Cloudflare. Now I've got some basic details here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and fill out some basic info here. Looks like most of our stuff is saved, and we will click Complete Purchase. And that should get our domain name bought for this new domain. All right, so we now own setupmem.com through Cloudflare. We're going to come back into our Microsoft 365 admin portal, and I'm going to go ahead and paste in that domain name that I just purchased and click Use this domain. Now, depending on what registrar that you're using, Microsoft can automatically integrate with certain ones where they can create the DNS text record to verify that you in fact own the domain. So we can see right here, it automatically detected that domain is purchased with Cloudflare. So if we go ahead and click on Verify, that's going to automatically add a DNS text record that is specific for Microsoft for them to verify that you in fact own that DNS name. So I'm going to go ahead and click Authorize. That gives Microsoft the ability to set that text record on the back end in Cloudflare. So this will take a minute, but that should automatically verify that we own that domain via Cloudflare. If I come back and click on my websites, and I click on setupmem.com and click on DNS, we can see that that just automatically added it for us so that we didn't have to go and manually paste and create a new text record for that domain name with the verification content. So at this point, we have now confirmed that custom domain name for our tenant here. So now that we've confirmed that, we're going to go back to our Intune portal. So we're going to go to endpoint.microsoft.com. So let me actually just type that in. It looks like that was taking me to Microsoft 365 admin portal. So we're just going to go to endpoint.microsoft.com where we have our Intune admin portal. So this is the basic dashboard that you're going to get when you log in. Now the first step, once we have our trial configured, is we're going to go enable automatic enrollment. So to do that, we're going to go to Devices, Windows Devices, Windows Enrollment, and then Automatic Enrollment. Now, by default, the Intune trial is going to license you only with a Microsoft Intune subscription. Now, there might be some features within Intune that require an additional subscription, such as automatic enrollment for Windows Autopilot. So what this means is that if you wanted a device to automatically enroll in Microsoft Intune when they're going through Windows Autopilot, which is when the user is registering the device with Azure AD, you need to have an additional plan that costs additional money. So Microsoft is kind of smart here. They will put some features behind higher cost SKUs than just Microsoft Intune, for example. Now, the one thing I will call out here is that you certainly can use Microsoft Intune without one of these premium SKUs. The only difference is that when you enroll a device, it won't automatically enroll in device management. So you would have to go into the settings app within Windows after it's enrolled. And then there's an option where you can manually enroll it within device management, which will enroll it within Intune. For the purpose of this trial, though, what we're going to do is we're going to do a trial for enterprise mobility and security. So let's go ahead and click on free trial, and then we will activate. Now, one benefit about this trial is it's available for 90 days. So the enterprise security E5, this will actually include Intune as well. So even though we only have a 30-day trial of Intune, we actually have a 90-day if we enable this subscription that will allow us to automatically have the auto enrollment and some other more advanced features in addition to Intune. Now this can take a couple minutes to set up. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to go back to the Microsoft 365 admin portal at admin.microsoft.com. We're going to go to billing and then licensing. From here, we're going to go ahead and assign some of our licenses for enterprise mobility and security. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and assign that license to my global admin account that I used to register this trial. Now, in addition to that, just because we're not going to want to do most of our work using global admin, we're actually going to create another account for an actual user that we'll use for Intune enrollment. So let me go ahead and click on our users here, and I'm going to add a new user. There we go. So we're going to call this user John Smith. And the username will be John. And even though we've verified that domain for setupmem.com, it looks like it hasn't fully processed. So sometimes this might take a minute or two for that to process. So let's go back to our setup screen, set up your custom domain. And we can see it is verified, but it just might take a minute or two before you can actually activate that for a new user. So what I'm going to do, let me just try to hard refresh up here in the wheel and see if I add a user again. There we go. So we can see after just a quick refresh, it took a minute or so. We now have the setupmem.com that we can use for a new user. So let's go ahead and do John Smith, and we're going to do John at setupmem.com for the email address. I'm going to manually set the password for the purpose of the demo, and I'm not going to require me to change it at the next login, and I'm going to choose next. And I'm going to assign the Enterprise Mobility and Security E5. This will include Microsoft Intune as well, so there's not a need to go in and assign Intune if they've been assigned that other trial subscription that we automatically added. So I'm going to choose on next here, and then finish. So this will be the actual user that I use for things like enrolling a device. Okay. So if we come back into Microsoft Intune portal, let's just do a refresh over here. And it looks like that setting has taken effect where we can now see the auto enrollment feature. So just to come back to show you where I'm at, I'm under Devices, Windows, and then Windows Enrollment. From here under Automatic Enrollment, we are going to enable the automatic enrollment for both the MDM and the MAM scope. So what this will do is when devices are rolling into Azure AD using Autopilot, it will also automatically enroll them into device management so that they're managed by Intune. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save here. Next up, this is an optional step, but what I'm going to do is go to portal.azure.com. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and find my Active Directory, Azure Active Directory domain services. So let's go ahead and okay, let's look here. Azure Active Directory, there we go. So what I'm going to do, this is totally optional, but I'm going to set up custom branding. So within Autopilot, if you want to see things like your logos, whether it's your company logos, or even if you're just testing it and you want to set up some logos yourself, it does make the sign-in experience a little bit better and more customized. So what I'm going to do is, and in the accompanying blog post, we'll probably post out some of these logos as well because I've already predefined them as the correct sizes. So we've got some pretty cool just Patch My PC branded logos that we'll be uploading here. So the background image, this would be when there's a web page that you're signing into. If you wanted to have a full background image, this is just 1080p. I'll go ahead and upload that image. We then have a banner image. Let me go ahead and upload that one, 280 by 60. And then we have some square logos that are 240 by 240. So we have a dark themed one, and then we have a light themed one. So the first one in the selection is light themed, and then we have our dark themed one, which is right here. There we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Save, so that will give me a bit more of a customized feel whenever I'm logging in. And you can add the any images that you want that might be a cool branding option within here as well. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is come over to Microsoft Intune again. We're going to go under Devices, Windows, and Windows Enrollment again. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to disable Windows Hello for Business. Now, it's important to note this is just for my testing environment that I'm disabling this. The reason I'm doing this is by default, when you go in and you enroll a new device into Autopilot, once you're done with the sign-in process, it will either require you to do Windows Hello for Business, like a PIN code or a Face ID, if you don't disable this setting. Since I'm going to be using this on a lot of virtual machines, and I'm going to be logging in with various different accounts, I don't really want to go have to get a text for all these different test accounts. Now, if this was a production environment, obviously you would likely want to have two-factor authentication. So I'm going to disable the Windows Hello for the security key sign-in, and then the top, the Windows Hello for Business. So both of these are going to be set to disabled, and by default, that should apply to all users within the company. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save here. Now, as a best practice, we likely wouldn't want to generally sign in with the default account that we used when we created this tenant, which would be a global admin automatically. So what I'm going to do is go over to Azure AD, and we're going to go ahead and look at our users. So we can see we have the global administrator that we had when we created it. We also have the John user that we assigned when we created that Intune user. Next, what I'll do is create a new user, and we're going to go ahead and create one that is an Intune administrator, but not a global administrator. So I'm going to just use Justin at setupmem.com. We'll do Justin Chalfant. Go ahead and create a password here. Under the roles, this is where you have various different groups that you can use for the roles that somebody might have. So for Justin at setupmem.com, I'm just going to go ahead and make that user an Intune administrator. Optionally, if you had any office groups that you wanted to do, you could add them here as well when you're creating it. Obviously, in my case, I do not. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Create. And it looks like for some reason that didn't work. It might be the licenses aren't assigned to that user. So what I'll actually do here, just to keep this simple, let me try to create this user in the admin portal. So I'm just going to go admin.microsoft.com. And let me just try to create Justin over here. And within here, I'll assign the license as I'm creating the user. So let's just do Justin at setupmem. Okay, let's go back. I wonder if that account actually got created, but it just failed to add it to the group. Let's try to refresh here. Okay, so there's Justin. So it looks like it did get created, but there's some kind of error, which I suspect it might have been when it tried to add it to the group. Oh, there we go. So this is actually the one that I want, Justin at setupmem.com. If I look under my licenses, yeah, so we can see that we don't currently have any licenses, so we can assign these in Azure AD or Microsoft admin portal. For this, let me just try to assign it in Azure AD. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so can't be assigned without a usage location. Okay, let's go back over here. Azure AD, and let's go assign a usage location to that user. So let's come back here. So my guess is that the Office admin or the Microsoft admin, it must set the location automatically, but maybe Azure AD doesn't by default. So if we come here under, and just search for usage, there we go. And we'll just select United States. And then we'll save that. And then we'll try to assign that license and then save. Okay, let's go. Okay. Looks like that must not fully be applied because it looks like it still doesn't think it's part of a location here. Just refresh that page once more. There we go. So that just took a second to apply once we set the usage location. And now if we go back to assign roles, let's try to make this an Intune administrator as well. Okay, so that should be good. So what we could do now, let me just exit out of my Edge browser and let's go incognito again. So if we go to endpoint.microsoft.com, we should hopefully be able to sign in with that account that is not global admin, and it's just an Intune admin. So that's kind of a security best practice. From here, we can also see that custom image being applied for the background as well as our logo that we had through branding. So we'll go ahead and click on sign in. Looks like for Azure AD, it does require me to change the password. So I probably could have disabled that, but must have missed that step in the portal. Let's see if this works. Alrighty, so we are now all signed in using a Intune admin account rather than global admin. So that would probably be a good thing to do as you're setting up Intune as well. So what I'm going to do now that we have our device enrollment set to automatic, I'm going to jump over to a Windows 11 virtual machine. This is in the out-of-the-box experience, so we've just installed Windows 11, and this is where we'll run through Autopilot to get this device enrolled. We'll just use the defaults for most of these settings here, and we're going to use the john@setupmem.com account, which is just a standard user. So let's jump back over and look at John. So if we go to, let's see, we go to users, all users, we're just going to use that John account that we created initially. So this is just the standard user. It does have the Intune or Enterprise Security license. So this should hopefully allow the device to auto-enroll since that user is licensed. So let's come back over here and we're going to go ahead and paste in the email address. And I'm just copying the password and let's try to paste in that password. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and click on sign in. So at this point, it should automatically be enrolling in Azure AD. And since we have automatic enrollment enabled for Windows, it should automatically register the device into Microsoft Intune as well during this process. I'm just going to leave all the defaults here for privacy and click accept. And now it's going through just the default out-of-box experience once we're logging in here. And we should be to the Windows 11 desktop in just a couple seconds here. All right, we are now on the Windows desktop. So a quick way we can confirm that we are enrolled in Microsoft Intune is going to Settings. And then under Accounts, we can go down to Access, Work, and School. From here, we can see that we're currently signed in as John at setupmem.com into Azure AD. If we click on here and click on Info, if we're enrolled in Device Management, you're going to see the device sync status here. That means that we're enrolled for device management through Microsoft Intune. So let me just click on Sync here. So we can see that everything was enrolled into both Azure AD and Intune successfully. Now it might take a few minutes if we jump back over to Microsoft Intune and look at devices. It can take a couple minutes for the device to be reflected within the Intune console. So what I'll do is I'll pause the video and we'll come back in a minute or two. All right, so we're back. It took about 2 or 3 minutes for the device to show up. I just clicked on refresh and we now have that device showing up in Intune. So we can see that we've already got some basic information about the device, like who the user is, what's the operating system, some basic app info and hardware info. So we've already got some discovery information coming up. So at this point, I believe that should cover what I wanted to cover for this first introduction video, which was really just the fundamentals of setting up an Intune trial and some of the configurations that you'll likely want to do while you're configuring that trial. I hope this video was helpful and thank you for watching.